On September 9th, OPEC will be holding one of its regular summits to decide what to do about their oil output quotas: raise them, lower them, or keep them the same. The decision will be made with an eye towards Libya. When Libya descended into civil war a few months ago, it took about 1.8 million barrels per day of high-quality, low-sulfur crude offline. There are many among the OPEC hawks who are concerned what will happen in the aftermath of the fall of the Gaddafi government. If the replacement government, whatever that happens to look like, is able to bring oil back online quickly, oil prices could go into a tailspin, they fear. Stratfor does not see Libya's oil coming back on anywhere near that sort of time frame. And after all, we're only talking about 1.8 million barrels per day of output here, less than 2% of global production. But for countries who are wanting to keep prices as high as possible, that could still be just enough. After all, it took Gaddafi 25 years to grow oil output to the 1.8 million point that they were at earlier this year. No matter how bad Libya's recovery is, it's probably going to be faster than that. And even by starkly conservative estimates, getting 3 million barrels per day out of the country by, say, 2020 is entirely possible, even likely. But while Libya is certainly something for the OPEC states to watch, the reality of the situation is that OPEC output calls are really made by a very short list of states. OPEC has captured, or perhaps a better word is darkened, the public imagination ever since the Arab oil embargoes of 1973. And considering how critical petroleum is to the modern economy, it's easy to see why. Or is it? In 1973, global oil sales accounted for almost 8% of global GDP. Now the number's closer to 3%. And in 1973, OPEC states were, shall we say, less than friendly with the United States. Now many of them are friends, if not outright allies. None of this means that OPEC is finished as an organization or a cartel, simply that the reality of what OPEC is and can be has shifted somewhat. It's extremely useful to take a look at the cartel's production figures in order to determine where the cartel's leverage lies. In the past 3 years, OPEC has regained some of its pricing power. From 2003 to 2008, OPEC maintained hardly any spare capacity, making it very difficult for the organization to impact prices one way or another. But that spare capacity is not, and has never been, evenly distributed throughout the cartel. At times, over 90% of OPEC's spare capacity has resided within a single member, Saudi Arabia. Even today, with the most distributed spare capacity that OPEC has had in a decade, the Saudis are still responsible for 2/3 of the spare capacity of the entire organization. In contrast, OPEC price hawks Venezuela and Iran traditionally maintain some of the smallest spare capacities of the organization. In late 2011, these two price hawks actually have what is one of their largest spare capacities in their history, roughly 350,000 barrels between them. Saudi Arabia has 2.25 million. Iran and Venezuela argue for low output levels for two reasons. One, they don't have spare capacity. They can't increase their output to take advantage of such a decision. Second, just as importantly, if OPEC cuts its output, they don't cut their production. They're quota cheaters, and they do everything they can to maximize the revenue. As such, Saudi is and will remain the kingpin of the organization because it's the one that actually implements the changes that make a difference in global output levels. A great example is the June summit of the organization from earlier this year. Due to Iranian objections, OPEC declined to raise output levels. But a few days later, Saudi Arabia dumped a cool 1 million barrels per day of output on the markets anyway. In other words, don't watch the summit. Watch Riyadh.